We're joined by another candidate, this time in studio, which is always exciting. Candidate for Mesa, Arizona City Council, District 3, Jacob Martinez. Welcome to the TYT studios.
Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you making the trip out. We do a lot of interviews, but as I keep saying, it's different when you're in the room with the person. So we were talking a little bit before this, and one of the first impressions that you probably get when people see you is that you are not one of the okay boomer type politicians. You're a little bit younger, not even a millennial actually.
Yeah, Gen Z.
Okay, there you go. Probably one of the first Gen Z politicians then. So you're running for city council.
Yes.
You had an interest in politics at a young age, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I mean, my interest in politics started very young, and that was really just interest in kind of what was happening. You know, I really didn't have an involvement. I wasn't really, grassroots, but I was kind of keen and seeing what was going on. And then as time went on, I got more and more involved. And it's gotten to the point now where I decided that really I can take that to the next step and run and try and make the city that I lived in my whole life a better place.
Exactly. And tell us a little bit about some of the issues that brought you into politics.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the biggest things that really kind of propelled me, and we'll probably talk about a little bit more, and if any of your viewers remember from last time I was on here, I used to be the chairman of the Teenage Republicans. And after the shooting in Parkland, I decided to step down because leading up to that, the GOP had already so many issues, and I don't even want to call it the GOP, but the Republican Party had so many issues. And then children and kids were dying in their high school, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm in class just like they are. And something like this could happen to me, and the Republican Party refused to take action. And for me, that was the tipping point. And I stepped down and I voiced my concern, and here we are, almost 2 years later, and fighting for progressive causes.
So I want to talk about that issue, but before we get to that, you said chairman of the Republican, so that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, why the Republicans at that time? I mean, just from my own point of view, when I was that young, I mean, I wasn't even really paying attention to politics, let alone getting involved in one particular party. So what is it that drew you to the party?
It was really just kind of who I was surrounded by, especially the school I went to. I was at a charter school, and I would talk to the administration and the staff there, and they were very, very far right. And that was really big on kind of shaping my views at that point. And then as I started to talk to more people in the Republican Party, it was really kind of a pushing, keep going, and to where I was kind of like their poster child, especially in Arizona.
Yeah.
And then it got to a point where it's like, I divert from you guys on a couple issues, and you're calling for my head. And that, I mean, we need to, if the Republican Party ever wants to succeed, they need to drastically change their platform and really get in the 21st century, because as it stands right now, I mean, they're not going to succeed.
Yeah, and to the extent that they think that they can, it's probably not with people your age voting for them. They think we need to motivate the people who've been voting for us for 60 years at this point. So the shooting happens, and you get involved in grassroots activism around that issue. So tell me a little bit about that and some of the frustrations that you experienced while doing that.
Yeah, well, so even before resigning, I got involved with March for Our Lives Arizona, and I was the lead organizer, one of the lead organizers for organizing that out there. And we were trying constantly to get meeting with different legislators and state officials, the governor, and every single time we mentioned what we were talking about, the door was slammed in our face. Sometimes, these individuals, these electeds that were Republican, they knew me, and that was kind of an in. But then as soon as we started talking about this issue,
they knew you from your previous.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as soon as they heard gun safety, the door, it's done. And that really showed that like they're not open to talking about this. Just a couple months ago, I had an elected official come up to me and was just harassing me because I was at an event campaigning. And I said, we need to work together. We're not getting anything done if we don't. And she said, no, we don't. We don't work with Democrats. It's not what we do. And I mean,
honest,
that's really, I mean, it shows that they're not willing to work together, and that's not what we need right now.
Yeah, so I'm curious. You said that you got the cold shoulder, or literally the closed door when it came to the Republicans. But there's a lot of Democrats that are bad on this issue or don't prioritize it. Did you find that they were more receptive to meetings and talking out possible legislation?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in Arizona, we have our fair share of really moderate Dems that don't want to talk, don't really want to be at the forefront of this issue, and that's fine. But they took the time to talk with us, and I really respect that, because even though they don't want to take these drastic measures like we may have wanted to, they were willing to have the conversation. And that's all we wanted from Republicans. We weren't asking them to be a prime sponsor on a gun control bill, but we wanted to talk to them.
Yeah.
And that wasn't happening.
Okay. And so you make the decision to run for city council. What's that like? How do you go from being an activist previously involved in party politics to deciding to actually run?
I mean, it was really just seeing things that were happening in my city and not being happy with them. I live in Mesa and we have the highest utility rates in the county. And that's, I mean, it's just crazy because especially in my district, we have a very high minority and lower income population. And they're just, hiking up these regressive taxes and putting it back on people. And really, it's not even that it's a regressive tax because they're putting this in place because they don't have to get it voter approved. That's why they've been putting all these policies in place, and it's not hurting the richer people in the eastern side of town, but it's the people in my district, and those are the people we need to be fighting for.
Okay, and tell me a little bit more about your platform. If you get into office, what are some of your initial priorities?
We need to get back to listening to voters. I mean, we have seen, especially on this, on utility rates, but then just representation in general. There's no accountability. They're just spending money. They're doing whatever they want, which when it comes down to it, voters aren't having any say. Voters have actually rejected measures because they were regressive taxes that they didn't want. And the city council turned around and did it anyway. And I mean, that really shows a lack of regard for what the voters are saying.
So we were talking before this, you said you've been running for about a year now, and still more than a year to go, or around a year, right around a year. So as you've been talking with people, you've mentioned some of the regulatory changes that have been made that you're saying aren't supported by the people there. They're not listening, all of that. Are you feeling that when you're talking to your theoretical constituents?
Oh, absolutely. I've been going door to door, basically since the beginning. And as I'm talking to people, I mean, they're angry. People don't feel heard. And something I get a lot is, you're the first person to knock on my door in years. And that's because, I mean, really it's come down to they have a lot of money. They're backed by these big developers and all these special interest groups, and they feel like these seats they're entitled to them. And we just really need to do away with that. I'm not backed by developers. I'm not backed by all these special interest groups. This is really a grassroots talk to the people. Let's fix these issues campaign.
Okay. So you say you're not backed by those people. There's certainly a lot of negatives in terms of actually being able to represent the people if you're backed by those groups. The benefit is that they will write you checks. And so talk to me about you're coming in as not just sort of new to politics, but also young. What are some of the challenges of campaigning?
It's fundraising. I mean, and as we were talking about, a lot of politicians that may be a little bit older than me, their go-to and kind of the lines you hear all the time is, go down your contacts list and talk to every person you know. And as a younger candidate, and really any younger person in general that might want to do anything that's involved with fundraising, our networks are a little bit different. We don't have people who are able to write $500, $1,000 checks. And in a campaign like this, especially when there's so much money going against you, that gets hard. And that's really, I mean, that's going to be imperative to making this a successful campaign and keeping going is going to be, that ability to raise money, especially, and I mean, it's going to be, the grassroots progressive people that are going to do it.
And so the person you're running against, you don't know for sure, right? The incumbent Francisco Heredia hasn't yet filed for.
He's running.
Oh, he is running now. Okay. So I'm curious then. Obviously, been around for a bit. We talked about some of the negatives of running as a younger candidate. What are some of the advantages that you found?
People like to see bold, new, fresh ideas. As I've been talking to people, originally the thought, and especially kind of the people around me, were like, is your age going to be an issue? Is it going to hurt you? And I really wasn't quite sure. I didn't think it was, but I didn't really know because I hadn't done it yet. But as I've gotten out there and as I've been talking to people and talking to voters, I realized that it's much more of an asset than it is a liability. People are excited to see new people in politics. They're so tired of the same old boys club, especially in the city of Mesa, that's been there and had been in power for the last couple decades. And so they're excited to see a change, and I'm excited to give it to them.
I was curious about one other thing. So you talked about the work that you did with March for Our Lives, but you also worked in literal voter registration. That sort of organizing seems like it would come in handy when you're trying to, especially at the city level where turnout isn't necessarily so high. I assume that has to be a benefit.
No, I'm actually very proud of that. Last December, I partnered with some organizations, and in West Mesa alone, by myself, I was able to register 300 new young voters to vote. And then that was really, I mean, that's, put campaigning and put that aside. millennials and Gen Zers, we make up the largest voting bloc in the country. If we all turned out and voted, no other demographic would matter. That's the power that we have. And so getting people to acknowledge that and register to vote and take that first step is really just going to be great. And hopefully, we saw a record-breaking turnout in the midterms. And hopefully as we go into 2020 and beyond, we continue to see that. And as I hope that benefits my campaign, but really in the broader scale of things, it could really help our country.
And where can people find out more about your campaign?
My website is martinezformesa.com, FORmesa.com. You can find all information on my campaign. If you're interested in donating, that's gonna be the most imperative thing that I need help from progressives right now. It's really appreciated, and everything you need to know will be on that website.
Awesome. Well, Jacob Martinez,
thank you
so much for joining us.
Thank you.
The TYT Plus app is now available on iOS and Android. Download to get more TYT content at tyt.com/app.